Hi, welcome to Module 2. Last module, we talked about the types of questions that data can answer, where to find data on the web, how to scrape data, and the importance of building a data catalog. In addition to keeping a data catalog, the other astonishingly important piece of documentation that you need to keep is a data biography. You need to understand your data as thoroughly as you would any source for your story. It's actually a good idea to understand your data even better than you would a normal human source, since data can hide things either accidentally or intentionally better than some people. Deep interviews of your data are the key to ensuring that you're going to use and not accidentally abuse the data when you're telling your data story. Building a data biography is taking the time to get to know the answer to the key questions: who, what, where, when, and importantly, why and how the data that you're working with exists. In the next few videos, we're going to talk the details about the process of building your data biography. There's also a link to a downloadable data biography template available in our course materials. I'm going to use an example from a real-world data story that I worked on with the topic of violence against women, because that's an area that I work on quite a bit. Let's look at a graph of the rate of violence against women. This graph is astonishing because it shows how United Nations data can show a completely different rate of intimate partner violence in the same country. This chart shows a comparison of intimate partner violence rates across countries without accounting for what and how the data is working. The results seem dramatic, but in fact are meaningless, or even worse, false. This is comparing apples to oranges and bananas and watermelons. The person making this chart did not spend enough time on their data biographies. This chart uses the data correctly after the data biography has been written and shows studies and data across countries that are using similar methods and similar definitions. This is comparing apples to apples. One of the reasons I really like this example is that it's from the real world, and then also that the data is from the United Nations. Sometimes I hear people say, if you trust the source, you can trust the data. And in my experience, over and over again, this is not true. If by trusting the data, you mean that the UN would not intentionally mislead you with fake data, yes, okay, I agree with that. But if you're going to use any data from any source, you need to understand the data, not simply trust the source. Trusting the data that you're going to use to tell a story is mostly about trusting your understanding of the data. You can't simply download and use data from any source at all, regardless of how much you trust it. For example, I generally do trust the United Nations as a source of good data. However, the data the United Nations provides in most of its databases are curated from a huge variety of sources and secondary data owners. In addition, some of the ways that the United Nations uses data is very well suited to the purposes and perspectives of the United Nations, but not great for stories that I would like to tell. This is not unique to the United Nations. This is true of every single individual organization or institution that owns data. Trusting the institution does not equal trusting the data. Understanding the data equals being able to tell good stories that can be trusted with your data. So before using any data set, you need to do the background research to find out what the data biography is. How was the database put together? How has it been checked for errors? And if possible, always try to speak to the person responsible for collecting and maintaining the database and any other subject matter experts, scientists, or researchers who might have used the data. Always build a data biography. This will be your rock-solid foundation for understanding your data's strengths and weaknesses. To build your data biography, you need to ask just 6 simple questions: who, where, when, what, why, and how.